Svarkil stood at the edge of the ship's platform, his imposing figure casting a long shadow over the bustling military academy below. His Torethian armor gleamed under the Earth's yellow sun, a stark contrast to the rugged, utilitarian surroundings of the human facility. As the ship's hatch hissed shut behind him, Svarkil adjusted the breathing regulator on his chest and stepped down the ramp, each footfall heavy with purpose. The air was dense with an energy he couldn't quite identify. Anticipation mixed with tension, perhaps. A group of humans stood waiting for him. At the forefront was Captain Maria Torres, her crisp uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's unified defense forces. She stepped forward, her hand outstretched, her expression confident yet guarded. Svarkil hesitated for a moment before gripping her hand firmly, his claws carefully retracted to avoid causing harm. The human's grip was surprisingly strong. "Welcome to Earth, Svarkil," she said, her voice steady and professional. "We're honored to host you at our academy." Svarkil inclined his head slightly, his segmented brow furrowing in curiosity. "Your hospitality is noted, Captain Torres. I hope this visit proves as enlightening as your people claim." Torres offered a polite smile, but her sharp eyes betrayed a flicker of something else, perhaps amusement or caution. "I'm sure it will. Follow me. We have much to show you." As they walked through the academy's sprawling campus, Svarkil took in his surroundings with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The buildings were solid but uninspired, constructed with a focus on functionality over elegance. Human recruits jogged past in tight formations, their faces flushed with exertion, their breaths visible in the crisp morning air. Svarkil noted their apparent physical limitations, their short stature, their lack of natural armor or enhanced senses. It was difficult to imagine how such a fragile species had survived long enough to join the galactic stage, let alone become a force to reckon with. They entered a large training facility, its walls lined with racks of primitive-looking weapons. Inside, recruits sparred in pairs, their movements swift and aggressive. Svarkil tilted his head, watching as a young woman feigned a stumble, then used her opponent's overconfidence to sweep his legs out from under him. The technique was crude but effective. "Resourceful," he remarked, his voice a low rumble. But such tactics would fail against a superior foe. Maria Torres smirked, crossing her arms as she watched the sparring match. "You'd be surprised. Humans have a knack for adapting under pressure." The tour continued, each stop offering new glimpses into humanity's peculiar approach to warfare. In one training ground, recruits simulated urban combat, using the broken shells of buildings as cover. Smoke filled the air as they moved with practiced precision, coordinating their movements through a mix of hand signals and short bursts of communication. Svarkil noted the lack of advanced equipment. No cloaking devices, no energy shields, but the humans compensated with sheer ingenuity. They set traps, created diversions, and worked in unison to outmaneuver their simulated enemies. In another area, recruits underwent endurance tests that bordered on the sadistic. They crawled through freezing mud, dragged heavy packs across scorching terrain, and stood motionless for hours under simulated enemy fire. Svarkil felt a pang of discomfort as he watched. These humans lacked the physical resilience of his own kind, yet they pushed themselves to their limits, and beyond, with an almost reckless determination. "You push your people hard," Svarkil observed as they left the endurance course behind. "Is it worth breaking so many to forge a few?" Torres' expression darkened slightly. "We don't break them, Svarkil. We make them unbreakable. Every soldier here knows what's at stake. They train to survive and to win." As they approached another building, a low, rhythmic thudding sound reached Svarkil's ears. The noise grew louder as they neared, and he realized it was coming from a massive hangar. The doors slid open, revealing rows of human soldiers engaged in close-quarters combat drills. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and the sharp crack of fists meeting padded armor. Svarkil's eyes narrowed as he observed their techniques. Quick, brutal, and designed to incapacitate rather than kill. One recruit, a wiry young man, caught his attention. Despite his smaller frame, the human moved with incredible speed, dodging strikes and landing precise blows that sent his opponents reeling. Zvarkil found himself grudgingly impressed. "You trained them to be predators," he said, his voice tinged with both admiration and unease. Torres gave a small nod. "We trained them to survive. There's a difference." The final stop on the tour was a towering structure at the edge of the campus, its metallic surface gleaming in the sunlight. A large sign above the entrance read, "Restricted, Level Omega." Zvarkil paused, his gaze lingering on the warning signs plastered along the walls. Faint, unidentifiable noises drifted from within. Clanking metal, muffled voices, and something that sounded like a low growl. "What lies beyond those doors?" he asked, his voice heavy with suspicion. Torres' expression remained neutral, but her tone was firm. "That's classified. Let's move on." Zvarkil's claws twitched at his sides, his instincts urging him to press further. But the look in Torres' eyes warned him against it. He followed her away from the building, his mind racing with possibilities. What could the humans be hiding that required such secrecy? The unease he had felt upon arriving was beginning to solidify into something more tangible, an edge of fear that he couldn't shake. As the day drew to a close, Zvarkil stood on a balcony overlooking the campus, his thoughts a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The humans were weaker than he had expected, yet their resourcefulness and determination unsettled him. Their methods were crude, their technology inferior, but there was something about them. Something dangerous, something he couldn't quite define. Maria Torres joined him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "You've seen a lot today," she said, her voice softer now. "What do you think?" Zvarkil considered his words carefully. "You are different from what I imagined. Fragile, yet resilient. Reckless, yet cunning. I cannot decide whether to respect your people or fear them." Torres smiled faintly, her expression unreadable. "Maybe a little of both. That's what keeps us alive." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the academy in a fiery glow, Zvarkil couldn't shake the feeling that he had only glimpsed the surface of something far more complex and far more dangerous. Zvarkil followed Maria Torres through the gates of the training grounds, his sharp, alien eyes scanning every detail. The facility stretched as far as he could see, a maze of structures and open fields teeming with activity. Groups of human recruits moved with a sense of urgency, their faces focused and determined. Zvarkil observed them silently, his imposing figure towering over the humans around him. The air was filled with the clatter of weapons, shouted orders, and the rhythmic pounding of boots on the ground. It was chaos, yet somehow it seemed orchestrated. Torres gestured to a large open area where a team of recruits was setting up for a combat simulation. Smoke canisters were already releasing thick clouds, shrouding the area in a gray haze. The recruits wore lightweight armor and carried what looked to Zvarkil like primitive weapons. No energy-based technology, no advanced targeting systems. It was almost laughable. He turned to Torres, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Your soldiers still rely on such outdated methods. I expected better from a species that prides itself on survival." Torres smirked, unfazed by his comment. "Sometimes the simplest tools are the most effective. Watch." The simulation began, and Zvarkil's interest was piqued despite himself. The recruits split into two groups, one tasked with defending a makeshift base, the other with infiltrating it. The attackers moved swiftly and silently, using the dense smoke as cover. Zvarkil's eyes tracked their movements, noting how they adapted to the terrain. The defenders, meanwhile, set up traps. Tripwires connected to crude explosives, hidden pitfalls designed to incapacitate rather than kill. When the attackers advanced, the traps slowed them down, forcing them to change tactics on the fly. Zvarkil leaned forward slightly, intrigued despite his earlier doubts. The recruits' coordination was remarkable. They communicated with subtle hand signals and quiet whispers, working together seamlessly. One recruit pretended to stumble, drawing attention to himself, while his teammates silently flanked the enemy. The maneuver was executed perfectly, leaving the attackers momentarily disoriented. Svarkil couldn't help but nod in approval. Clever. But such tactics would fail against a superior force with advanced technology. Torres crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. Perhaps, but sometimes outsmarting the enemy matters more than overpowering them. As they moved to another section of the training grounds, Svarkil's gaze was drawn to a towering structure surrounded by uneven terrain. Recruits were scattered across it, crawling through mud, climbing walls, and dragging heavy packs. The entire course looked designed to break the weak. One recruit slipped while scaling a wall, falling hard onto the ground below. Instead of giving up, the recruit pushed himself up and tried again, his face etched with pain and determination. Others around him didn't stop to help. They kept moving, focused on their own tasks. Svarkil observed the scene with a mixture of confusion and fascination. Your species places great emphasis on individual perseverance, yet they do not assist each other. Is that not counterproductive? Torres shook her head. They're not ignoring him. They're pushing him to get back up on his own. Out there, she gestured toward the sky. No one's coming to save you. If you can't push through pain and fear on your own, you won't survive. The recruit finally reached the top of the wall, his exhausted face breaking into a triumphant grin. Svarkil didn't say anything, but a small part of him acknowledged the strength of human willpower. It was raw and unpolished, but it was there. The next stop was an enclosed arena where close-quarters combat drills were taking place. The recruits paired off, each wielding a mix of melee weapons and their bare fists. Svarkil watched as they engaged in brutal, no-holds-barred combat. Blood was drawn and bruises formed, but no one stopped. One recruit, smaller than her opponent, used her speed to evade his attacks, landing quick, calculated strikes to his exposed areas. When he overextended in frustration, she swept his legs out from under him, pinning him to the ground with a triumphant yell. Torres glanced at Svarkil, clearly amused by his growing interest. You seem surprised. What did you expect? Svarkil straightened, his expression neutral. Your people lack natural weapons, yet they'd fight as though they are predators. It is unusual. Torres chuckled softly. We've had to be predators to survive. When you're not the strongest species, you find other ways to win. As they left the arena, a distant rumble caught Svarkil's attention. They walked toward the source of the sound, arriving at a large field where recruits were practicing against drone targets. The drones were equipped with cloaking devices, disappearing and reappearing unpredictably as they zipped through the air. The recruits used a combination of primitive projectile weapons and handheld EMP devices to disable the drones. It was a chaotic scene, with recruits shouting instructions and firing rapidly, but Svarkil noticed that every move was deliberate. Even when a recruit missed a shot, another was there to cover for them. One recruit, who had been pinned down by a particularly aggressive drone, suddenly rolled out of cover and launched an EMP grenade into the air. The grenade detonated with a bright flash, disabling the drone mid-flight. The recruit's teammates cheered as he pumped his fist in victory. Svarkil tilted his head, impressed despite himself. Your soldiers have a strange relationship with danger. They celebrate what should be routine. Torres grinned. Danger is part of the job. You learn to find joy in small victories, or the weight of it all will crush you. As the day wore on, Svarkil found himself reevaluating his initial impressions of humanity. Their technology was primitive, their methods unconventional, and their physical abilities unimpressive. Yet there was an undeniable energy about them, a resilience and resourcefulness that defied logic. It unsettled him. He had seen countless species across the galaxy, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, but none quite like this. The final exercise of the day was a live fire simulation. Recruits were tasked with defending a position against an onslaught of automated attack drones. Zvarkil watched intently as they scrambled to set up defenses, using whatever resources they had at their disposal. Some created barricades from debris, while others rigged explosives to slow the drones' advance. When the drones attacked, the recruits fought back with everything they had, their movements precise and coordinated. One recruit took a hit, falling to the ground as his weapon skidded out of reach. Before Zvarkil could even process what was happening, another recruit grabbed the fallen soldier's weapon and continued firing, shielding him until he could recover. It was a display of teamwork that Zvarkil hadn't expected. The recruits didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for each other. It was a strange, almost alien concept to him, yet it worked. As the simulation ended and the recruits celebrated their hard-earned victory, Zvarkil stood in silence, his thoughts racing. He had come to this academy expecting to find a weak, fragile species clinging to outdated methods of survival. Instead, he had found something far more complex and far more dangerous. Zvarkil followed Captain Maria Torres into a quieter part of the academy, away from the relentless activity of the training grounds. This section seemed more subdued, with neatly organized buildings and paved walkways. The air was still charged with energy, but it felt more focused here, as if this area was where strategy and intellect took precedence over physical endurance. Torres led him to a large hall with wide glass windows that let in natural light. Inside, humans in uniforms and lab coats were gathered around various displays. "This is where we exchange ideas," Torres explained as they entered. "A mix of training, innovation, and cross-cultural learning. Since you're here as part of the diplomatic exchange, we thought it was fitting to show you how we prepare not just physically, but mentally." Zvarkil scanned the room, his tall frame drawing the attention of everyone present. His segmented eyes narrowed as he observed holographic projections, technical schematics, and animated simulations displayed on large screens. Humans clustered in groups, debating strategies or analyzing data. To him, it looked chaotic at first glance, but as he watched, patterns began to emerge. Each group worked toward a specific goal, their discussions blending into a symphony of problem-solving. It was more coordinated than he had anticipated. A young cadet approached with a tablet in hand. Her uniform was crisp, and her nervousness was evident in the way she hesitated before speaking. Sir Zvarkil, would you like to see one of our tactical scenarios? We've been using data from past interstellar conflicts to simulate potential strategies." Torres gave the cadet a nod of encouragement, and Zvarkil gestured for her to continue. She activated the tablet, projecting a three-dimensional map of a planetary battlefield. The scenario involved a human fleet defending a colony against an invading force. Zvarkil's mandibles clicked softly as he studied the simulation. The human fleet was vastly outnumbered, their ships outdated compared to the enemy. Yet, as the simulation played out, the humans managed to hold their ground by using clever tactics, luring the enemy into asteroid fields, creating diversions, and even sacrificing smaller ships to protect the colony's main defenses. "Impressive," Zvarkil admitted, his voice low and grudging. "Your strategies rely heavily on deception and misdirection. Effective, but dishonorable by Sorethian standards." The cadet straightened, her initial nervousness replaced with quiet confidence. "We value survival over honor, sir. It's not about playing fair. It's about protecting what matters." Zvarkil regarded her for a moment before nodding. He couldn't argue with the logic, even if it clashed with his own beliefs. The human's adaptability and pragmatism were unlike anything he had encountered before. As they moved deeper into the hall, Zvarkil noticed a section dedicated to cultural exchange. Artifacts, holograms, and recordings from various Earth cultures were displayed alongside information about their significance. One exhibit caught his attention, a holographic display of Earth's history. It showcased humanity's progress, from ancient civilizations to the dawn of space exploration. Zwarkil paused, his eyes fixed on scenes of war, famine, and natural disasters interspersed with moments of triumph and innovation. "Your history is one of conflict," he remarked. "Yet you persist. Why?" Torres stepped beside him, her gaze on the hologram. "Because every conflict taught us something. We learned how to adapt, how to rebuild, and how to grow stronger. It's not the conflict itself, it's what comes after." Zwarkil considered her words, his claws tapping lightly against his armor. The Exorethians prided themselves on their unbroken lineage of strength, yet they had never faced the kind of relentless adversity that seemed to define humanity. It was a strength born not of physical superiority, but of an indomitable will. He found it unsettling. Before he could respond, a commotion erupted on the far side of the hall. A group of humans clustered around a device emitting a series of loud beats. Torres excused herself and moved quickly to investigate, with Zwarkil following close behind. When they reached the group, Zwarkil immediately recognized the source of the commotion, a combat simulation pod. It was unlike anything he had seen on Earth so far, its sleek design and glowing panels suggesting it had been repurposed from alien technology. "What is this?" Zwarkil demanded, his voice sharp. One of the technicians looked up, startled by his imposing presence. "It's a simulation device we acquired through a trade agreement. We've been using it to test our soldiers' responses in zero-gravity combat scenarios." Zwarkil's mandibles twitched in disapproval. "This technology is Xorethian. How did you obtain it?" Torres raised a hand to calm him. "It was legally obtained, I assure you. But if it makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you'd like to see how we use it firsthand." Before Zwarkil could object, Torres signaled for a cadet to step forward. The young man entered the pod, and the door sealed shut behind him. A moment later, the holographic display above the pod lit up, showing the simulation in progress. The cadet was armed with a simple projectile weapon, facing off against a swarm of drones in a zero-gravity environment. Zwarkil watched intently, his unease momentarily forgotten. The cadet moved with surprising agility, using his surroundings to evade the drones and firing precise shots to disable them. The simulation became increasingly difficult, with the drones adapting to the cadet's tactics. Zwarkil could see the strain on the young man's face, but he didn't falter. When the simulation ended, the cadet emerged from the pod, drenched in sweat but victorious. "Your soldiers have potential," Zwarkil admitted reluctantly, "but they lack the discipline and instinct of true warriors." Torres smiled faintly. "Discipline can be taught. Instinct comes from experience, and humans learn quickly." As the day continued, Zwarkil found himself increasingly intrigued and unsettled by what he witnessed. The humans were not what he had expected. They were fragile, flawed, and chaotic, yet they possessed a resilience that defied logic. They were survivors in the truest sense, willing to adapt, to endure, and to fight for their place in the galaxy. But it was during a demonstration in the hall's lower levels that Zwarkil experienced his first real shock. A group of scientists had gathered around a display case containing a small glowing device. Torres explained that it was an experimental power source, capable of generating massive amounts of energy in a compact form. Zwarkil leaned closer, his segmented eyes narrowing. The energy signature was familiar, too familiar. "This is not of human origin," he said, his voice a low growl. "Where did you acquire this?" One of the scientists hesitated before replying. "It was salvaged from an alien wreckage. We've been studying it to understand its potential applications." Zwarkil straightened, his claws flexing. "You are tampering with forces you do not understand. This technology could destroy you." Torres met his gaze, her expression calm but resolute. "Or it could save us. That's a risk we're willing to take." For the first time since his arrival, Zwarkil felt a flicker of fear, not for the humans, but because of them. They were willing to gamble everything for survival, even if it meant playing with powers beyond their comprehension. It was reckless, dangerous, and entirely human, and it made them far more formidable than he had ever imagined. The air was heavy with anticipation as Maria Torres led Svarkil to a secured underground facility. Unlike the bustling training grounds and the strategic halls they had visited earlier, this area exuded an air of secrecy and importance. Thick steel doors slid open with a mechanical hiss, revealing a massive, dimly lit chamber. In the center of the room stood an elaborate rig, an advanced simulation pod encased in reinforced glass, surrounded by a network of wires and holographic monitors. Torres gestured toward the pod, her voice steady but with a trace of pride. "This is where we test the limits of our soldiers' mental and physical capabilities. We call it the Apex simulation." Svarkil's segmented eyes narrowed as he stepped closer, his claws clicking softly against the floor. "And what makes this simulation different from the others I have seen?" Torres folded her arms, a faint smirk tugging at the corners of her lips. "Unlike the combat drills and tactical scenarios you've witnessed, the Apex simulation is designed to mimic real-world conditions with extreme precision. It adapts in real time, presenting challenges that push the participant to their breaking point. It's not just about skill. It's about resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to face the impossible." Svarkil's mandibles twitched in skepticism. "And what happens when they fail?" Torres' gaze hardened, her voice firm. "They learn. Failure is a teacher like no other." As if on cue, a young cadet stepped forward, his expression a mix of determination and nerves. His name patch read Williams, and he couldn't have been older than 20. The technicians prepared him for the simulation, attaching sensors to monitor his vitals and securing him inside the pod. The glass casing sealed shut, and the room fell silent as the monitors flickered to life. The simulation began with a sudden jolt. The holographic display above the pod showed Williams standing in the ruins of a city under siege. Alien warships loomed overhead, their energy weapons raining destruction. The ground shook with every explosion, and the air was thick with smoke and ash. Williams had nothing but a standard-issue rifle and a limited supply of ammunition. His mission: survive and secure an evacuation route for a group of stranded civilians. Svarkil watched intently as Williams moved through the simulated battlefield. The young cadet was quick on his feet, using the debris for cover and conserving his ammunition. He engaged enemy drones with precision, targeting their weak points to maximize efficiency. But the simulation was relentless. Every time Williams gained ground, new obstacles emerged. Collapsing buildings blocked his path, hostile forces adapted to his tactics, and the civilians he was tasked to protect panicked, making the mission even harder. "This is a fool's errand," Svarkil muttered, his voice low enough for only Torres to hear. "The odds are deliberately stacked against him. No one could succeed under such conditions." Torres didn't take her eyes off the display. "It's not about succeeding. It's about seeing how far he can go before he breaks." As the simulation intensified, Williams faced a particularly harrowing challenge. A group of enemy drones ambushed him, cutting off his escape route. With no clear path forward, he made a desperate decision. He rigged his remaining ammunition into an improvised explosive, luring the drones into a confined space before detonating it. The explosion was enough to neutralize the threat, but the blast injured Williams, leaving him limping and vulnerable. Svarkil tilted his head, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. He sacrifices his resources recklessly. In a real scenario, such actions would ensure his demise. Torres glanced at him, her expression unreadable. Maybe. Or maybe it's what keeps him alive long enough to save others. The simulation escalated further. Williams reached the civilians, a group of terrified holographic figures huddled in a makeshift shelter. Their evacuation point was a transport ship on the other side of the city, but enemy forces were closing in fast. Despite his injuries, Williams rallied the civilians, guiding them through the chaos while fending off attacks. His movements were slower now, his aim less steady, but he pressed on, refusing to abandon his mission. Svarkil's claws tightened against his arms as he watched. For all his criticism of human tactics and technology, he couldn't deny the sheer tenacity of this cadet. Williams was outmatched, outgunned, and physically compromised, yet he continued to fight with a ferocity that defied logic. It was reckless, bordering on suicidal, but it was undeniably effective. The simulation's final challenge was a brutal one. The transport ship was under attack, its engines failing as enemy forces swarmed the area. Williams had to hold the line long enough for the civilians to board safely. He used the last of his ammunition, then resorted to hand-to-hand combat, taking down drones with nothing but his bare hands and makeshift weapons. The strain was evident. His movements were sluggish, his breathing labored. But he didn't stop. Finally, the last civilian boarded the ship. Williams activated the launch sequence, collapsing to the ground as the transport lifted off. The simulation ended abruptly, the holographic display fading to black. The room was silent as the pod opened, and Williams stumbled out, drenched in sweat and gasping for air. A medic rushed to his side, checking his vitals, but he waved them off with a shaky smile. Torres turned to Svarkil, her expression calm, but with a glint of pride in her eyes. And that's what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons, not our technology, but our refusal to give up, even when the odds are impossible. Svarkil stared at Williams, his segmented eyes narrowing. The cadet was physically unimpressive, his body battered and exhausted, yet there was an unyielding fire in his gaze. It was a fire Svarkil had seen only rarely, even among the most elite warriors of his own species. It was a fire that refused to be extinguished, no matter the cost. "Your kind is reckless," Svarkil said finally, his voice low and measured. "You throw yourselves into situations with no hope of survival, relying on luck and desperation to carry you through. It is illogical." Tori smirked, her arms crossed. "Maybe, but it works." Svarkil said nothing, his mind racing. He had come to this academy expecting to find a weak, disorganized species struggling to survive. Instead, he had found something far more dangerous, a species that thrived on adversity, that refused to accept defeat, and that turned every failure into a lesson. It was unsettling, to say the least. As the room began to clear, Svarkil remained where he stood, watching as Williams was helped out of the chamber. The cadet was battered but smiling, his resilience unshaken. Svarkil couldn't help but feel a flicker of unease. For the first time, he realized that the greatest threat humanity posed wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their relentless will to survive, no matter the cost. As the simulation chamber emptied, the hum of machinery faded into an almost eerie silence. Svarkil lingered near the holographic monitors, his gaze fixed on the fading remnants of the Apex simulation. His mind churned with thoughts he wasn't ready to confront. What he had seen defied his understanding of warfare. Humanity's unorthodox methods, their willingness to adapt and endure, gnawed at the edges of his pride. The cadet's resilience had been admirable, even if Svarkil would never admit it aloud. Maria Torres interrupted his thoughts, her boots echoing softly against the metallic floor as she approached. "You look troubled," she remarked, her voice calm yet probing. "Did the simulation unsettle you?" Svarkil turned to face her, his towering frame casting a long shadow. "Your methods are chaotic, your soldiers reckless, and your reliance on incomplete technology borders on madness. Yet you achieve results. I cannot decide if this is brilliance or desperation." "Maybe it's both," Torres replied with a faint smile. "Sometimes survival isn't about following the rules. It's about rewriting them." Before Svarkil could respond, a technician hurried into the room, his face pale and anxious. "Captain Torres," he said, his voice tight with urgency, "there's been an anomaly in the classified sector. You're needed immediately." Torres' expression hardened. She shot Svarkil a brief look. "Come with me. If you want to understand humanity, you'll need to see this." Svarkil hesitated but ultimately followed her. They exited the simulation chamber and entered a secured corridor lined with reinforced walls and biometric scanners. The air felt heavier here, as if even the atmosphere recognized the gravity of what lay beyond. Torres led the way, her stride brisk and purposeful, while the technician trailed behind, muttering something about containment protocols. They arrived at a sealed door marked with bold red warnings. Classified access only. Torres placed her hand on a scanner, her identification verified in an instant. The door slid open to reveal a vast, dimly lit lab filled with advanced equipment. At the center of the room was a containment field, its shimmering energy casting an otherworldly glow. Inside the field was a device, a jagged alien structure pulsating with an unsettling light. Svarkil stopped in his tracks, his segmented eyes widening. He recognized the device immediately. The feedback loop began to take effect, the core's pulsations slowing as the excess energy was siphoned off. The room held its collective breath as the reading stabilized, the blinding light dimming to a faint glow. Finally, the core fell silent. Svarkil stepped out of the containment field, his suit singed but intact. The room erupted in a mix of relief and exhaustion, the tension breaking like a dam. Torres approached him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and respect. "You just saved us." Svarkil's mandibles twitched in what might have been a grim smile. "Do not thank me. Thank your own foolish courage. It was your determination that forced my hand." As they left the lab, Svarkil couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The humans had come dangerously close to disaster, yet their resilience had prevailed once again. They were a species unlike any he had ever encountered, reckless, resourceful, and utterly relentless. And for the first time, Svarkil began to understand why the galaxy feared them. The containment lab silence was soon replaced by subdued chatter and sighs of relief. Technicians, scientists, and officers exchanged weary glances, each acknowledging the weight of what they had just overcome. Svarkil stood apart from the group, his towering frame silhouetted against the faint glow of the now dormant Xarathian core. Despite the victory, his thoughts remained restless. For all their recklessness, these humans had faced a danger they could barely comprehend and survived. Maria Torres approached him, her expression equal parts relief and satisfaction. "You're not celebrating," she remarked. "I thought saving the day might give you a reason to enjoy yourself." Svarkil turned to her, his segmented eyes reflecting the faint light. This was not a victory to celebrate. It was a catastrophe narrowly avoided, a testament to your species' habit of courting destruction. Her lips twitched into a small, knowing smile. "And yet, you stayed. You didn't walk away when you had the chance." He was silent for a moment, his mandibles twitching in contemplation. "Your persistence, it is infectious," he admitted. "Even in the face of certain doom, you refuse to yield. It is both admirable and deeply unsettling." Before Torres could respond, an officer entered the lab, saluting briskly. "Captain, the General wants a debriefing immediately. We've also detected unusual energy readings on the outskirts of the base. It might be related to the core's activity." Torres nodded, her demeanor shifting to one of sharp focus. "Understood. Send a team to investigate the readings. I'll handle the debrief." She glanced at Svarkil. "You're coming with me." The debriefing took place in a secure conference room, where General Allen awaited them with a group of high-ranking officers. Svarkil observed the humans' dynamic carefully, noting how Torres stood firm under scrutiny. She outlined the events leading up to the core's activation, emphasizing the collaborative effort that had prevented disaster. When she mentioned Svarkil's role, the room fell silent, every pair of eyes turning toward him. "I acted out of necessity," he said bluntly, his deep voice resonating through the room. "Do not mistake my actions for altruism. Your survival is as much in my interest as it is in yours." General Allen studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Whatever your reasons, your actions saved lives. That's not something we'll forget." As the debrief concluded, an alert blared through the base's intercom. Unidentified energy signature detected at perimeter coordinates. All personnel to defensive positions. Torres and Zvarkil exchanged a glance, both understanding the implications immediately. Without wasting a second, they moved to the command center, where a holographic map displayed the source of the disturbance. The energy signature was disturbingly similar to the Xorathian core, its intensity fluctuating as if probing the area. Could it be another device? Torres asked, her voice tight with concern. Zvarkil shook his head. No, this is different. It is not a weapon. It is a beacon. Something, or someone, is responding to the core's activation. The realization hit the room like a cold wave. The Xorathian core had not merely been a dormant relic. It had been a signal, a call to its creators. And now something had answered. Within minutes, the base was in full lockdown. Soldiers armed themselves with everything they could muster, their faces set with grim determination. Zvarkil joined them at the front lines, his alien form towering over the humans around him. He carried no weapon, but his presence alone was a statement, a silent acknowledgement that they were in this together. As the minutes dragged on, the sky above the base darkened unnaturally, an ominous hum vibrating through the air. A rift tore open in the atmosphere, and from it emerged a Xorathian warship. Its sleek, menacing design glinted against the fading light, its energy weapons glowing ominously. The ground shook as the ship descended, its size dwarfing everything around it. Zvarkil's mandibles tightened as he watched. They have come to reclaim the core, and they will not leave without a fight. Torres stepped forward, her voice calm yet commanding. Then we give them one. Everyone, hold your positions. No one fires until I give the order. The Xorathian ship landed with a thunderous impact, and moments later, a group of alien soldiers disembarked. They were a fearsome sight, their armor gleaming and weapons crackling with energy. At their forefront stood a Xorathian commander, his imposing figure radiating authority. Zvarkil. The commander growled, his voice echoing unnaturally. You stand with these primitives. Zvarkil stepped forward, his posture unwavering. These primitives are more than you understand. They have earned my respect, a concept you would not comprehend. The commander's mandibles flared in disdain. You have betrayed your kind. Surrender the core, and perhaps we will show you mercy. Torres interrupted, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The core stays with us. If you want it, you'll have to go through every single one of us. The commander snarled, raising his weapon, but Zvarkil raised a claw to stop him. If you proceed, he said, his tone lethal, you will learn why humans are to be feared. For a moment, the air was thick with unspoken threats. Then, without warning, the Xorathians attacked. Energy bolts lit up the battlefield as human soldiers returned fire, their training and determination driving them forward. Zvarkil fought alongside them, his claws slicing through enemy ranks with precision. Despite their technological disadvantage, the humans held their ground, their sheer willpower turning the tide. The battle reached its climax when Torres and Zvarkil managed to flank the Xorathian commander. Torres fired a precise shot that disabled his weapon, while Zvarkil engaged him in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The clash was fierce, but Zvarkil's experience and resolve proved superior. He incapacitated the commander, leaving him defeated and disarmed. As the remaining Xorathian forces retreated, the warship's engines roared to life, lifting off in a hasty withdrawal. The battlefield fell silent, the victory hard-earned but undeniable. Zvarkil stood amidst the aftermath, his breathing heavy as he surveyed the scene. The humans around him, battered but triumphant, shared quiet nods and murmurs of relief. Torres approached him, her expression a mix of exhaustion and pride. You stayed, she said simply. He looked at her, his segmented eyes reflecting the determination he had come to admire. You gave me a reason to. In that moment, Zvarkil understood the truth. Humanity's strength wasn't in their weapons or their numbers. It was in their unyielding spirit, their refusal to back down, even in the face of insurmountable odds. It was a force unlike any he had ever encountered, and it terrified him. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting its light over the battlefield, Svarkil knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven themselves to be more than survivors. They were fighters, dreamers, and above all, a force to be reckoned with.